be here and look out and see your happy faces. When you look at me, you always put a smile on your face if you wish. We want to welcome into our congregation, but not into the congregation, but into our worship service this morning. This young lady that's sitting in the back, all the way to the back, Andrea, I think is her name. She's covering her face. Her face is becoming almost as red as her jacket, but don't tell her I said that. But Andrea, we're real happy to have you with us. And I understand you've been here before. If you haven't been here before, welcome to our services today. I'm Phil. I'm just an old country boy from Pennsylvania. I spent my years in the ministry. And my years are coming to an end. I know that for sure. That the days behind me are greater than the days that we had me. But we're real happy to have you with us today. Parents. Oh, I love my parents. I love my dad and my mom. I mean, they put up with an awful lot with me. And right now, I want to say that there's times that I wish I would never tell some of the things they used to tell about me when I was a kid. I think you all happen to have that same situation. I know Steve doesn't want me to talk about my most embarrassing moment because it embarrasses him when I talk about it. But it's funny. But I can remember one of the very first things that my dad told, or my mother told my wife right after we started going together. The very first time that they met Vera, they sat down and they told her some of the things about me when I was a kid. And my mom always used to love to tell the story about how my brother and I would were a problem for her. Now, it's nothing that we did that was wrong. It was the fact that we just had different personalities. My brother was a year and a half older than me. He was born in December, and I was born in June, a year and a half later. And my mom used to say that while we were growing up, almost the time I was born, I was a boy that wanted to stay home, and if she would take me out, I would fuss and I would cry and I would be restless. And when they stayed home, my brother was the way I was. He didn't like to stay home. He wanted to be on the go. And he would fuss and cry and everything else. And she says, I never knew what to do, whether to go or to stay. And she said there was always a problem with her whenever they were going somewhere as to how they were going to handle that. But I don't like change. I never did. I don't think I ever will. I like things status quo. I like things to remain the way they always have been. Except I like to see church growth. But I'm one, I just don't like change. And as I begin to think about things that have happened over the past several months in our world today, our world is changing. Our world is changing. We found what happened down in New Zealand with Christ Church, where the bombing of the mosque in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, bombing up there. And Pittsburgh was a place that I'm very familiar with, and I should see the bombing there. And then what happened last Sunday morning in Sri Lanka. And right now, I guess all travel to Sri Lanka from the United States has been canceled. You can't get a passport to Sri Lanka. But I am 100% against violence. I don't like violence. I was against the bombing of the abortion clinics, even though I was against the murders that were taking place in the abortion clinics. And I just don't like violence. And I don't think God ever intended for the Christian to use violence in order to be able to propagate their faith. I hope you understand what I'm saying. that we're living in a changeless world. And I've listened to the news, and my ears perk up a little bit when I hear them talking about some of the violence and the things that are taking place. Last night, for instance, I was sitting down in my recliner going through my sermon in my mind. And as I was sitting there, my phone, and I looked at it, a little message on things that are happening. People that were being killed by violence. People that were being prejudiced, having prejudice taken. That one thing after another, and by the way, nothing was good. Even Pittsburgh Pirates lost the ball game. Everything was bad. Everything was bad. And we're living in a bad world. And if people tell me things are getting better in the world, I have to laugh. I don't think they are. I really don't think they are. Whenever you begin to sit down and think about what's going on in the world today, I think that things are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And as we think of that, how is a Christian? One who is truly thinking about how to live. How are we to live in a world that is changing? And by the way, I did not recognize, when I worked on my sermon this week, the great similarity between the Sunday school class at 10 o'clock and what I'm going to be saying now. So for those of you who were here at 10 o'clock for this class that we had, the video that we watched, you might be getting a double dose. But that's good. That's good. I looked at Jesus, and I think Jesus was one of the most non-violent people that you ever want to see. He looked at the multitudes, he had compassion upon them. He prayed for those that were crucifying. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And as you begin to look at Jesus Christ, he was a man that has full of compassion, full of love, even allowed himself to go through the agony of the cross and to die for us. But before he died, there was a chapter in the book of the Gospel of John that I think is highly important to Christians today. How are we to live for Christ? How does the Christian face the bombings of churches, the murder and sacrifice of Christians and others? Jesus has observed the Lord's Supper with his disciples. He wandered through the streets of Jerusalem with them. And if you want to know basically what was being said as they wandered, you read the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th chapter of the Gospel of John. He was giving them final instruction for how they were to do before he went to the cross. In the 17th chapter of the Gospel of John, you find that Jesus and his disciples, the band that was with him, came to the Garden of Gethsemane. There was a brook there, and they sat on this side of the brook. At which time Jesus prayed for his disciples, as well as for us who believed on what the disciples, the apostles, had to say. Personally, you might disagree with this, but personally, I think this is the Lord's Prayer. I think what we normally call the Lord's Prayer should be called the Lord's model prayer. It's the prayer of Jesus. The 17th chapter, I want you to give you a something. I'm going to give you something. You go home and read it. Read the entire chapter, the 17th chapter. And you're going to find out what kind of a person Jesus Christ was. He prayed for the unity of the people, that they may be one. As I am in you, and you are in me, as Jesus said. He also prayed that those that followed him might be sanctified by the Word. Of course, the Word would be the Bible and Jesus Christ himself. And when we get down to the 15th verse of the 17th chapter of the Gospel of John, Jesus deals with how a person, a Christian, is to respond to the world in which we live. Listen to what he says. I pray not that you should take them out of the world. He's talking to God. But thou shouldest keep them from the evil. That interests me. I don't want you to take Christians out of the world. I want you to keep them here. But keep them from the evil that's in the world. Then he goes on and says, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. As thou hast sent me into the world, even so have I also sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they might also be sanctified through the truth. Neither pray I for these alone, that for them also which believe on me through their word. Interesting. I'm not praying just for the ones that hear. The disciples, the 12, I think, were out there as well. We know Mark was. And then he says, I'm not only praying for these. I'm praying for everyone that believes on what they say. Typically, he's praying for us. I think we need to understand when Jesus when the Bible talks about the world, what are we talking about? It's used different ways in the Bible. It talks about the creation. And I don't care what the evolutionists or some of the college professors and everybody else says. I think the Bible is absolutely 100% right when it comes to biblical creation. I happen to believe without any doubt in my mind that evolution is a lie that Satan has told the people, and they're clinging to it because it gives them an alternative to not accepting God. That's pretty strong, but that's what I believe. Not only does it refer to the creation, but it's a world that God loves. For God so loved who? Christians only know. He loved the world. Now, listen carefully. Those individuals who are responsible for the bombing of Christians and churches, killing all those people, injuring others, God loves them. That's kind of hard. And I want you to know I have prayed all week long for those individuals who have committed such a crime. The world is displayed as the enemy of Christian living. Love not the world, John says in 1 John, the 2nd chapter. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. For if any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. This is the world that Jesus was talking about. The evil that's in it. You protect Christians from the evil that's in the world today. And our protection is found in God's Word. But first of all, let's look at the world. Let's look at the world. It's a world that is cruel. Its very nature. Its very nature. You look at what's taken place in almost every nation and everywhere all around the world, people don't have respect for other people. They don't even have the respect for the life of another person. People are mean. I remember going to a church one time, and they had I was going to be their preacher. And I remember they had a reception for me, which they invited all the churches of the community. And they called on one of the leaders of the church that I was going to serve for prayer. And in that prayer, he made a statement, Lord, you keep our preacher humble. Because in the way we treat him, he will have to be. That was almost an exact quote. And he happened to be one of the hardest people I ever had to work with in my life. His prayer was honest. His prayer was honest. It's a confused world, politically. Oh, we talked a little bit about that this morning in class. I mean, we're told that you cannot bring politics out of the pulpit because you're going to hurt a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. I think it's time we face the idea that we need to put religion back into politics so that Christianity prevails. Religiously confused. How many churches are in Huntington? WSAZ had a news release about how a church attendance is dwindling. And that, well, I think maybe that was the inspiration for this particular sermon. It is a contentious world. Morality, what's moral, what's not? What about some of the old-time traditions that are validated by many of the opinions of individuals? It's contentious nationally, internationally, individually. It's complex, scientifically, socially, personally. The big question that I'm dealing with right now is how do we face the world? I don't know where I got this. I noticed in another sermon that I was looking at on the top of my computer. Love, we need to practice love instead of cruelty. We need to practice truth instead of confusion. We need to practice peace instead of contention. We need to practice biblical morality instead of the amorality of our world today. Blessed are the peacemakers, Jesus said in Matthew 5. Why? For they shall see God. We need to face the world with a compassion, just as Jesus has compassion. We need to face the world with a conviction that there is only one God. God through Jesus Christ is his Son, the Holy Spirit. And most of all, we need to face the world with courage. We need to face the world with Jesus Christ. Because we have a world to win. Years ago, I was instrumental in starting a church in Gallipolis. We had no witness there as far as the Christian Church, Church of Christ was concerned. And I got the vision of going up there and see what we had up there and what the possibilities were. And I went up, and I even went up to Middleport one night and talked to the ladies there, and they wanted me to come back the next week and preach for them. We're not going to support you until we know what your doctrine is and what kind of a preacher you are. I was very instrumental in starting that church. Up to 200, 300, 400 right now. But when I went up, about shortly after they all started, when Denny Colbert took over as their preacher, Denny was from Ireland. I went up to see Denny one time, and as I walked out the door, Denny had a big sign printed. It had to be done by a printer. And that sign said, "You are now entering your mission field. When you leave this building and go out those doors, you're entering your mission field." We need to convert people. We need to free people from contention. It's a changeless Christ for a changing world. I love the book of Hebrews. The 13th chapter says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You have solid ground through Jesus Christ to stand upon. We realize that through Jesus Christ, that every good and perfect gift comes from God the Father in heaven, because in Him there's no variableness, there's no turning. He's always the same. We need to realize that we have in our hands the greatest truth that has ever been given to the world. And we have the answer to the problems that the world faces. And my challenge to you, my friends, is that we take Christ into a world that is lost and dying, into a world that needs to hear about Jesus Christ, and take Him into this world. That the souls that are dying without Christ might know about Him, might accept Him. Isn't this what Jesus meant when He gave the Great Commission to His disciples? Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. According to Matthew, go ye into the world and make disciples of all lands. Teach them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always to the end of the world. I left part of that on. I'm sorry. We need to go in the world. We need to preach, live Jesus Christ, baptize, and to teach. Several years ago, I preached to a small congregation down in Corbin, Kentucky. I had a decent ministry there. When I say this, if you go, somebody from outside the state goes and preaches into Kentucky, you almost have to be converted to being a Kentuckian to be able to live there. And I'm saying that for love. And I had a good ministry there. And as I think of this, You know, I just forgot what I was going to say. Trying to remember. I'm getting old. I'm getting old. I look back and saw Mike and he scared me. I went down there. And as I was preaching and working down there, I can remember the things we used to do. And we did some things that were unusual. I remember now what I was going to talk about. We were going to have a vacation Bible school, so we had a parking lot vanity fair. Well, we had little games all over the place. Invited the neighborhood to come up, and we had more people there, and I think that even lived in that particular part of the town. But as I was there, the little boy came up to me and said, "I love you, Jesus." About a year and a half ago, we went down to their homecoming. That little boy is now about 6'7". He went down to the office of the church and called his dad, and his dad came running up almost in his pajamas just to see me. And I looked up to him. And later on, the minister told me that, he said, "You should hear the prayers he says." He says he's one of the best prayers we have in church. Not players, prayers. Does your heart good? Does your heart good to know the influence you have? Go, preach, baptize, and teach. We're going to be singing one verse of our invitation hymn. Marilyn, what is it?
Almost persuaded.
Almost persuaded. Is there anyone here that needs to make a confession, to be baptized, to become a Christian? We invite you to come as we stand and sing.